Let's watch this.
When Metzen returned on stage triumphant, it was the dawn of a new era for World of Warcraft. He is the man who can do an orcish growl that actually feels like one, and for many of us, that growl heralded a return, at least in part, to war. It's called World of Warcraft after all. Finally, World of Peacecraft was coming to an end, because, man, it really was getting old by that point. Now, though, we're almost at the end of the next expansion, and the story that they just added to the PTR has kicked off absolute chaos, at least,
I'm not surprised.
well, if you're on World of Warcraft Twitter, which is a funny place. But really, many people who played it have came out furious, almost feeling betrayed even, pretty much saying this is not the war we were promised. So we decided to hop on PTR.
Of course it's not. Um, re I remember there was, I have seen it in an Asmongold video, there was a part of a interview presentation with Metzen, and he said that the decision making in the development team is democratic. So the story that we see is voted on by the people that work at Blizzard, at the WoW team, and that's the problem. That's why it's shit. Because we all know who works there, you know. It's the Rainbow people, and they have no idea what is what makes something good. They don't know strength because they are weak themselves and they are scared of strength. And blah blah blah, stuff like that. That's the
And take
problem.
a look at the new story, and it's a little bit more complicated than the initial anger would suggest. The Red Dawn gets close to accidentally being a mockery of everything that it's trying to be. Farron, our new poster girl, wastes yet another opportunity to be an interesting character, and again, the Alliance and the Horde have absolutely zero edge to them. Now, this story does have teeth. It actually does some great world building, but Blizzard are, I think, still too afraid of letting those teeth do any actual biting.
Man, the animation is so bad. It's incredible. The an- don't get me wrong. The animations in the in-game cinematics got better until a certain point. I don't even know which one that was, and then it got worse. I think they peaked in Legion, or maybe even Shadowlands. I might give them that, but then it got worse, and it's really bad, like really really bad. It's incredible.
Blizzard, you gotta let the teeth connect with some flesh for people to feel it. Basically, they're still too afraid of making us feel uncomfortable. And that sounds like strong criticism, so I'm going to back it up, but there's a more pressing problem first. I've got big news for the thousands of you who have joined me on today's sponsor, Boot.dev, and that news is TypeScript. The
Yeah, we skipped the ad. I'm not in the mood for ad.
More important than anything that literally happens, where this goes wrong is in its tone. In the very intro, Trollbane says that the Sons of Lothar promote tolerance and mercy.
The moment anyone speaks about tolerance and that's their core value, they are fucked. You know it. How can I say that? Because every society that says that same is going down right now. Just look at Europe. Every country here that we are so tolerant, and that's why all the women getting raped. It's a tolerance because they tolerate bad people. They actually love bad people. It's disgusting.
That's a very crazy thing to just say out of left field, and that's what starts off this grand adventure with, the tone of a school teacher trying too hard, or of some bureaucrat talking about government policy. You know, as if the Sons of Lothar are a charity organization and not the name of one of the greatest military forces in Azeroth's history, who, kind of killed a lot of orcs. Now, he says this in response to Faerun Lothar. She sees Thoradein's wall, and to her it's a symbol of King Thoradein, a legendary figure in the lore of her people, and the man who united the human tribes through diplomacy and, of course, a bit of violence. But actually not just humans. He also forged a pact with the elves of Calthalas to win the Troll Wars, and that pact, which helped them win said war, is actually why Faerun's group of Wrathi are half-elves. So she sees this, and she's obviously in awe of this great symbol of her ancestors, yet, well, Trollbane immediately decries it. He says the wall means nothing, that the legend is in fact used to support Stromic superiority. By
How much you wanna bet that this is about Trump's wall to the border with Mexico? I can guarantee you it's 100% dead. 100% it's dead. That's all what this is about. And that's why it's so bad, because the people behind it that wrote that stuff are mentally unwell.
itself, that could feel a bit ludicrous, but it's not some standalone story. What it actually is a sequel to Heartlands, which is an audio drama. Now, in that drama, Danath's niece, Marin, pretty much loses the plot. She, skins a wolf right in front of Jaina in a reference to the legend of Thoradane, and then she leads the Strom army to certain defeat against a much, much larger force of Mag'har orcs. And the whole thing ends with Geira and Thrall stopping the whole cycle of violence, leaving the Alliance and the Horde forces free to go and fight in Khazal-Gar. It's basically what happened off screen when those two characters teleported away after we hit max level in the War Within. So, because of all of that, right, Danath Trollbane still feels the sting of Marin's betrayal. Now, that does make sense. It contextualizes why he says what he says about the big wall. But the thing is, that only makes sense if you've listened to Heartlands. And even with that, yeah, it's Danath being a mopey old man, which is a fair enough thing, but for a lot of players, well, we've actually seen a lot of mopey old men in World of Warcraft. Basically, WoW's old characters have all been hitting the cycle of violence drum, whilst the younger characters have been traipsing about as perfect pictures of self-righteousness, which has just felt a little bit flat. Now that we put
The thing is, if you grow up in a world full of war, of course you get grumpy and hardened. Of course you are. And if you grow up in a world without any war, you are a weak fucking pussy. That's, by the way, what we have in, the world right now. And that's a problem. People without hardship don't know hardship. They don't know how to be a good person. Now, I don't say that all people that know hardship are good people. Very obviously, that's not the case. But the thing is, people that don't know hardship are more likely to be horrible people. Just in different ways. Uh, am I getting side tangent? Am I too tired for this? And this is just it. This is all written by people who never had hardship. That's why it's so flaccid. This is not a hard erect dick that makes your orgasm. This is this is a flaccid. This is flaccid. This makes you go, how do I get that hard? What to do? Yeah, I just grabbed the thing in the drawer. You know, that's what this is, and I hate it. There's a reason why I would buy a single player version of the vanilla WoW uh, leveling experience. I would do that because it's fun. I really enjoyed leveling in vanilla WoW. I hate modern WoW. I hate it. It's so bad. It's so. Ugh. I. Jesus Christ. It's unspeakable how far World of Warcraft has fallen from its peak. It's amazing. I wouldn't be surprised if the player base of WoW is max of 1 million people. No, if that. I can't see it being that great.
Put that in the proper context, we can now investigate the story that's being told. All this brings us to the new story coming in patch 11.17. It's a new campaign, and it escalates over the course of a questline that's around an hour long. So we land in the Arathi Highlands, and we're
That's not a
immediately
lot.
met with a bandit attack on a wagon. Now, this is a reference to Westfall's opening, except this time, good news, we stop the murder. Now, the bandits are wearing a red mask. We've obviously seen those red masks before. It's the Defias. They're back at it again. And if you don't know the lore, the Defias are a group of bandits formed in response to Stormwind cheating the Stonemasons Guild out of their livelihoods after they helped rebuild Stormwind after the events of Warcraft 1.
Let me guess. Something. Oh, we aren't actually evil. We are being oppressed. We need help. I bet that's what's going to be the case here. Yeah, that's gonna be it.
Quite a while ago. They're basically a group who very much could have been working class heroes, but instead they ended up turning to violence. Now, and of course after the human heritage questline resolved the root conflict, the Defias seem to more just be bandits. But as it turns out, there's more to it, because we also find the emblem of a new group who are called the Red Dawn. Yes, just like the movie, we've got commies raining into the sky in Azeroth. No,
Great.
not really. They're a new group, and basically, they're trying to extort and bully farmers into joining their group. So basically, the Red Dawn are not good guys. We then head to Stromgarde to find out more about all of this, only to find that Marin still has supporters. She's, of course, the niece of Trollbane, who we saw in that audio drama. And we soon see her reporters are a bad bunch. They're being open.
You mean the audio drama that no one listened to? Because I can guarantee you, 90% of the player base doesn't care about these things.
Racist in the street, they're shouting about a future for humanity, they're trying to bully a dwarven blacksmith into leaving, all this stuff. So, we get deputized, we get our deputy badges, we go sort of copping about the place, running around telling loiterers to go home and, maintaining order. People in
This sounds boring. Which is one of the main reasons I don't like modern WoW. It's just boring. It's boring. It's all the same things. It's just stop.
the city are low on resources, they're blaming whoever they can really find. Their leaders, the orcs, the bandits. That's quite natural stuff. This is a world that's seen nothing but war for decades. It's been a bit ridiculous. Now we go into a tavern, only to hear that they've got almost no food left. So, rightly enough, they're furious. To them, the Alliance won't help, and we won't really help either. We're just flashing our badges and taking what little they've got left. And to make it worse, every time someone has a problem, Faerun says something real pointless about how we're really trying to help them. Suffice to say, she's a little tone deaf. Now, ignoring the racism angle,
well, that's not surprising. The character was created by people that are tone deaf. I mean, duh, very obviously.
here, which you actually can see making, complete sense in a fantasy world, but per the lore of this region, I'm not necessarily sure if it actually fits. What is fairly clear here is that we are making the problem worse. That's what's happening in the story. We're basically the representatives of the Alliance coming in and saying that what they've already been given is not enough. And of course, by doing that, what are us and Faerun doing? We're pushing people into the hands of extremists. We're so focused on the big world-ending war that we're letting our allies suffer. And you know what? That's actually a great storyline. And And you might think that's where this story is going. The idea that the Alliance have been grappling with all of these wars for such a long time that people at home are kind of suffering, and that's creating tensions. That perhaps makes us question our moral superiority when we're uncritically going around playing at cops while Faerun's dismissing concerns with platitudes. And I really wish they were trying to do a story like that, but Blizzard pumps the brakes immediately and they start to get the villain bat out. So we actually find out that the Alliance have indeed been sending caravans with supplies from Casmodan. The problem is that bandits have been stopping them. So it's actually not the case that the Alliance has been faced with a resource issue and they've had to divert the resources to the war effort, thus leaving people in the lurch at home. No, the Alliance are, once again, not doing anything wrong because they're great. No, it's all the fault of the Red Dawn, these new bandits. And that basically continues. Maren tries to convince Faerun to join their cause, but that doesn't work because she directly insults Faerun's elven blood to her face, which, isn't really smart. Refugee Point is then attacked with Scarlet Crusaders carrying Red Dawn emblems.
Wait, the Black Chick is racist against elves? Who could have guessed?
Slaughtering all non-humans. And at this point, it's really obvious what's happening here, while other characters really just don't seem to have any idea. It's a bit odd. The Red Dawn are essentially trying to get the Alliance and the Horde to fight again. They're stoking tensions. To that end, Hammerfall is attacked. Now, the orcs are kind enough to take in human refugees from the bandit attacks, but the humans kind of feel off. They're oddly ungrateful. They're making snide remarks about the orcish food, that kind of thing. And then, well, we find out that some of the Syndicate, another criminal group from the area, have also joined the Red Dawn, and as we find that out, suddenly we're attacked.
Of course.
It actually turns out those refugees are not refugees, they're Red Dawn in disguise.
Which is not a surprise.
Maybe that makes sense of why they're talking shit about orcish food. Anyway, we fend them off. We race back to Stromgarde only to find that the Red Dawn have ambushed a Strom patrol and they've tried to blame the orcs by leaving axes at the scene of the fight. It is, of course, a classic false flag. We go back to report the truth, but we're too late. Stromgarde is attacked by a full Red Dawn force, which obviously we clear out because we're the player and we're great. Now it ends with Faerun
the usual.
ready to deliver the killing blow to Maren, but Danath Trollbane jumps in to stop her. He does not want Maren to be made a martyr, and he would rather that Arathi history, well, states that they were a merciful people. So that's the end of
That's stupid. I mean, I'm not surprised that it's stupid. It's just, it's stupid.
the conflict. The Red Dawn are sent running with their tails between their legs, completely defeated, and Faerun gets showered in praise by Danath for upholding the true legend of Thoradane. And the sad thing is, with how it plays out, it does not feel earned at all. Actually, look what Faerun did. All she did was spout platitudes, be really tone deaf, and then win a fight.
Are you expecting anything else from the writers of WoW? I don't.
Ends with orcs and humans being friends again and the bandit threat being lessened, meaning the resources should be plentiful for the locals. All is well enough by the end, but it does set things up for the future. The Red Dawn still exist, they fled up north, and that means they'll probably pop up in Quel'Thalas during midnight. That's it. And, well, you now know the story as I've told it to you. Experientially, it feels toothless. When I look at the people commenting based on playing in the PTR, they're also saying it's toothless. So, let's actually engage with that.
The writers. It's that simple. The writers are to blame. The people that are working on the game are to blame. I mean, what are we talking here about? Of course, it's their fault.
We've done a lot of thinking, a lot of talking internally, and here's what we think the problem is. The Red Dawn could have been interesting villains. Maren could have been the second Garithos that a lot of people wanted in WoW. Not because they think Garithos is great and they want to emulate him, but because Garithos was a real shitbag. That made him a good villain. And you know what? I personally liked her in Heartlands. She loses herself in recreating legend. But the thing is, this entire quest line, including the propaganda that's revealed to be why people are joining, just ends up feeling rather baseless. Let me explain that, because it may not make sense without some lore background. So, the Kingdom of Strom was founded on a solid relationship with the elves, and that means this sudden uptick in human supremacy feels totally unnatural. Nothing in Thoradein's history had anything to do with humans versus other races.
That only exists because the writers want to make a point about racism. Because Trump bad and ooh, my border wall. That's all this is about. It's not complicated. It's actually very easy. That's all what is about. Stop making it complicated.
Their big existential threat was the Troll Wars, which he allied with elves to solve. And for all of modern history, they've actually had a close relationship with the nearby dwarves. Now, the Defias were formed when Stormwind refused to pay them for their work, and that was a true injustice. That's why the Defias story resonated with people. Essentially, good people were punished for no real solid reason. It was a good example of Stormwind being out of touch. The Scarlet Crusade splinter groups joining the Red Dawn based in propaganda also does make sense. There's posters calling for a greater purpose than just killing the undead. It makes some sense, but it's got nothing on the existential crisis.
What do you mean greater purpose? The undead are a serious threat to the entire continent. Hello? What's there to be a greater purpose? What do you mean? That's a great purpose. Hello? Who wrote this? Why am I asking? I already told you.
That made the Scarlet Crusade compelling villains in the first place. And that, of course, was the intense trauma of losing all of Lordaeron to a truly inhuman force, and what that brings out in people. So, you could imagine joining them and feeling right to. But the Red Dawn aren't really given that. They're not built up. Instead, it's one woman wanting to be a legendary hero and stoking up tensions to gather a loose ideological following. And basically, unlike with Warcraft's other great villains, you don't come out of this story thinking that the Red Dawn had much of a point. Blizzard tried to do that.
Because they don't. They only exist for the writers, for the makers of the game, to make a point about politics in real life. About current politics, you know, Trump bad, racism bad. I don't know if you can say it, but white people bad because there's only one black person here. That's the one we are following. That's the tone deaf one. Uh, might be that in that tour because it's Blizzard. I'm not surprised by anything here.
But it just feels like they didn't fully commit. They tried to have teeth, but they weren't really willing to let those teeth connect with flesh. And where it's frustrating is how this could have been brilliant. I mean, they're a sad, angry group of people who were given a false enemy. That's fundamentally something that could be the start of brilliant storytelling. But to emphasize that, one of their leaders is Joseph the Enlightened. He's a literal crazy Scarlet who bubble hearts away every time you fight him with some sort of sniveling voice line. So not only is he a joke, he's also played for a joke. And that
You're fortunate I changed my mind and spared you. Next time I will not be so forgiving. Yeah, sure. You just lost. Well, actually, he has more HP than the main character here. What's going on?
sucks. Blizzard are so afraid of making villains that you might agree with to the point where they're now just making them a parody. What works about the Scarlet Crusade?
Well, modern WoW is a parody of original WoW. At least that's how I see it. I mean, have you seen the standard UI? The standard UI of retail WoW looks like a cheap copy of the original WoW UI. It's insane. It at least to me it looks like that. It looks really bad. It looks really cheap.
Crusade is they had a point, but then they did wrong things. Same for the Defias, and so on and so forth. But in a world where Blizzard will undercut that by doing a bubble hearth joke, well, that's a world where we'll never get a Scarlet Crusade that feels like the Scarlet Crusade, or a new Defias that feels as good as the Defias did. And it's sad because Blizzard did try to do a good story here. I mean, if there's a point to it, it's to show that people who are in pain and anger can be misled and abused, but it doesn't have the courage to say they might have a point. It doesn't make anyone take responsibility for it. It essentially fails to commit. And of course, the Alliance and the Horde walk out of this story nice and shiny. Holy blameless.
Of course.
The Alliance sent what they could, but the Red Dawn blocked it. The Mag'har did absolutely nothing wrong either. They trusted humans, got attacked, and said, ah well, no big deal afterwards. No lingering tension, no damage dealt, just a big, happy, peaceful ending. You know.
Yeah, just like I said, flaccid. This is just boring. This is just boring. There's a reason I don't play WoW anymore. It's just not good. The writing is bad, the animations are bad. Well, in the cutscenes. In game, while playing, they are fine, mostly. And the game is just not good. In my eyes. It's, yeah.
Cue the closed captions that say orchestral swell. And then there's the bit where Faerun says, after meeting the Horde, that actually she thinks more of trolls than she did when hearing her people's history.
Which makes no But you hate elves? There's a reason I never liked that cunt.
But shortly after that, you do kind of go and murder 15 Amani trolls.
How? How is this a thing? This is so...
to stop them from boiling captured humans alive and eating them. It's
Great.
a bit odd, not exactly consistent in tone. What's next then? Look, the good news is this isn't all bad stuff. The threat of the Red Dawn amassing in Quel'Thalas does have potential, especially if they're a group who hate elves. That does leave room for some fun stuff on the table in the Midnight expansion. Of course, the Amani still being unrepented evil gives us a villain beyond the void for that expansion. Hey, a troll patch, I guess. Blizzard could, even if they undercut it all the time, try to bring back these Horde and Alliance tensions, and big picture, developing
They aren't. That's the point. They aren't. Or even if they are incapable of doing it because they're incompetent. Or just... I don't even know it at this point. It's so dumb.
Characters in regions like this is not a bad thing. It's really nice that a patch in a new expansion will take us back to the old world. And with future potential, who knows, the Red Dawn might find allies in the true Arathi, or maybe the true Arathi just laugh at them for being silly round-ear supremacists, given that they are, of course, themselves half-elves. Plus, the actual pacing of the quests, the animations and the cutscenes, all that stuff, for the most part the dialogue, it's actually all pretty good. It's Blizzard trying to say, there's a minor patch and it will have a slice of a campaign, a story for you to play. That's obviously something that Final Fantasy XIV uses to great effect, and I love to see them try to do that. And overall, there is a lot of love and care here.
Yeah, but the writers are trash. The reason why the story in Final Fantasy XIV is liked is because it's good. This isn't good. It's not.
I mean, the Defias, the Scarlet, the Syndicate, they're being tied together nicely. It does display a darkness that's inherent to Azeroth's troubles and her people, and there are some fun twists, some fun turns, lots of details. It's not all bad. It's just not exactly what we want, and it's pretty easy to poke some holes in it. So, as for the future then, even if it doesn't involve Xal'atath or the Void, I think this is directly setting the stage for Midnight. But when our major characters are completely incapable of making...
But who cares? That's a problem. Who cares?
Mistakes, it's hard to be excited for the story. You know, it does just feel like we go on a quest with Blizzard's golden boys and girls. especially when it's following the same formula. A third party comes in and stokes some tension, usually in a comically evil way, and then we beat them off and hear a speech about how, I don't want to shock you, war is bad or something.
What am I even supposed to say here? This is overwhelmed. Well, yeah, duh.
WoW Story has to be more than just names being mentioned and things being thematically tied together. The story has to actually make us feel something. And you see, the thing is, whenever faction tensions are stoked up and a player feels pride and actually feels like it's time for them to go and massacre the Horde or massacre the Alliance, and then the game sort of after that says, oh my god, you just massacred those people, that's pretty crazy. Well, do you know what that is? That's the player being emotionally invested in the moment, and actually, there being a bit of interactivity, emotional play with the player throughout the narrative, not just good lessons and things we like. And I think on that front, this largely does miss the mark. But the funny thing about today's
Of course it
Warcraft
does.
is, while they can still miss the mark, they also are actually starting to hit it more and more and more. And while I'd be tempted to give you some lore, there's loads of great lore on the channel, the next big thing you should watch is this on player housing, because it's being executed in a way that reminds me of the Blizzard entertainment that I fell in love with as a child.
You know, uh, player housing might be the best thing they have made in, I don't know, 5 years. And player housing, by the way, for the ones who don't know, was announced for WoW in vanilla. It was supposed to be in the game when it launched, but it wasn't. So it just took them over 20 years to actually make it, I guess. That, well, yeah, that's, you know, Blizzard.